I'm Jayamal Ratnayaka for the Newsfirst team. Today is the 22nd of April 2020. The 22nd of April is regarded as World Earth Day. However, today many events commemorating World Earth Day were held online in a very unusual manner as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that has struck our country and the world over. However, an unexpected side effect of COVID-19 has been the reduced environmental pollution. Skies are clearing of pollution, waterways are clearing, and wildlife are approaching these waterways. Flora and fauna in our country and the world over are blooming in ways we have not seen for many, many decades. In Sri Lanka, earlier or last year, we reported to you that the air quality has dropped to an unfavorable, unhealthy level. However, we are pleased to note that by now, as a result of the restricted human activities as a result of COVID-19, the air quality in Sri Lanka has been restored and is now favorable, which only means one thing: we are now breathing clear air. While Newsfirst understands that we are going through a trying and challenging time, we should also take a step back and marvel at the wonders of Mother Nature that we are being presented with. With that, let's take a look at your headlines for tonight.
Number of COVID-19 patients in the country increases. Professor Channa Jayasumana says the general election could be held in 3 phases. Lakshman Kiriyala says the previous parliament could be convened on the 2nd of June. Curfew passes of vendors conducting mobile sales and delivery who fail to comply with health guidelines to be terminated.
රජයේ උපදෙස් පරිදි ක්‍රියාත්මක ණය සහන මහජන බැංකුවේ ගනුදෙනුකාර බහුතොන් වෙත ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා අයදුම්කරුගේ නම, ජාතික හැඳුනුම්පත් අංකය, ජංගම හෝ ඉතුරුම් ගිණුම් අංකය, ණය මුදල යන තොරතුරු 0706යි 481යි 481 0768යි 481යි 481 යන දුරකථන අංකවලට SMS මගින් හෝ Viber, WhatsApp, email යන ඕනෑම මාධ්‍යයක් කරහා 2020 අප්‍රේල් මාස 30 වන දිනට පෙර ඉල්ලුම් කරන්න. නැතිනම් coronarelief@peoplesbank.lk විද්‍යුත් ලිපිනයට යොමු කරන්න.
Taking a look at those stories in detail. The total number of patients who tested positive for COVID-19 in Sri Lanka has risen to 322. Director General of Health Services, Dr. Anil Jasinga said 12 more patients from the quarantine centres in Batiklo and Polonnaruwa tested positive for COVID-19 today. Currently, 210 active patients are under medical supervision. The epidemiology unit of the Health Ministry said 104 patients have recovered so far. As of today, 7 deaths have been reported due to COVID-19. Now, a lockdown has been imposed in several areas as a result of COVID-19. Let's take a look at the updated situation of those areas.
Ten residents of Marty's Lane, which is located in close proximity to Bandaranaike Mawatha, were sent for quarantine this afternoon. Our correspondent reported these people had been sent for quarantine on the advice of the army and health officers. Bandaranaike Mawatha, MJM Lafir Mawatha, Abdul Jabbar Mawatha, Old Moor Street, Abdul Hamid Mawatha, Mirania Street and Princess Gate are under strict surveillance at present. Entry to these areas has been completely prohibited. 9 people of the same family residing at Thomas Lane in Demanakoda were sent to quarantine in Iranamadu. 4 children, including an infant, are among this family. Meanwhile, a PCR test was carried out on a person suspected to have the COVID virus in the Polwatta area in Vallampitiya. Our correspondent reported that a woman from Bandaranaike Mawatha had visited the area during the last few days. Entry to several areas, including Nagalagam Street, continue to be barred. A tight security plan is being implemented in the area. Several areas in the vicinity of Feta were disinfected this afternoon. Among them were the Fort Railway Station, the areas opposite the Presidential Secretariat and Main Street in Feta. Police used water cannons to disinfect the area.
Three people who were living near the residence of a fishmonger from Gramodhyamawata in Nivantidiya Piliyandala who had tested positive for the virus had been sent to the quarantine centre in Handala. A team of public health inspectors inspected the area today. The medical officer of health in the area stated that PCR tests had been carried out on 11 people who had come into contact with the patient and that the tests had turned out negative. However, these people are to undergo another test within a few days based on medical advice. 81 residents of 25 families in School Lane and Gramodhyamawata have been instructed to undergo self-quarantine. There needs to be no unnecessary fear about this particular location due to the risk. We hear that there is a reduction in the food supply here as well. We will continue to be working with these individuals on the quarantine process. The shop which had been run by the patient was located in the Polgasovite area in Vatara. A team including the medical officer of Kahatadua had informed the residents in the vicinity of the shop regarding the infected case. Our correspondent reported that the families of 12 people who had visited his shop are undergoing self-quarantine.
අද දින COVID-19 රෝගීන් 12 දෙනෙක් හමු වෙලා තියෙනවා.
12 COVID-19 patients have been identified today. They were in the process of being quarantined in Punani. These individuals were all from Beruwala. One further patient was identified in the Polonnaruwa hospital while receiving treatment. The patients, including those who have been identified in Punani, have been sent to our newest quarantine centre in Kattankudi, and there are about 30 patients there at the moment. We have also decided that only 2 passengers can travel in a 3-wheeler. Any more passengers will not be permitted to travel. Also, salons will remain closed. Shops near hospitals serving things like food, these tend to have low hygiene levels. They too will be closed.
ආහාර වැනි දෙන සාමාන්‍යයෙන් සනීපාරක්ෂක තත්ත්වයෙන් හීන එම සියලුම ස්ථාන තවදුරටත් වසා තැබීමට තීරණය කරලා තියෙනවා.
Meanwhile, a group of vendors at the Paliagoda fish market were subjected to PCR tests today. Out of 1,000 people who work here, 500 will be subject to the PCR test. We plan to test the rest of them in the next phase. After these tests are done, both customers and vendors that trade here will be able to do so with confidence. A corona patient has come here and purchased fish. Upon the information received by the police, they have halted business. Tomorrow we will decide how we will be doing business. The safety of our people is more important than doing businesses. At this time, it is not the business side, it is the safety of the country that matters. The Sri Lanka Navy disinfected the Paliagoda fish market yesterday. Retail sales were also temporarily halted from last afternoon. As a result, trade at the Paliagoda fish market will be limited to the wholesale traders. Therefore, the Ministry of Fisheries has requested all retail vendors to refrain from engaging in trade at the Paliagoda fish market.
The Sri Lanka Police has issued new guidelines for vendors conducting door-to-door mobile sales and delivery of essential goods such as dry rations, vegetables and fruits.
The acting IGP has introduced a set of regulations to be followed by traders who provide home delivery services to distribute goods. Accordingly, wearing clean clothes, fully covered shoes, gloves and face masks, along with using hand sanitizers or disinfectants are a must. At the same time, traders engaged in the delivery of bakery items must refrain from touching the goods and must use equipment instead, while also using paper bags or paper to wrap the bakery items. Refraining from touching food items after exchanging money with consumers, preventing customers from touching food items, and maintaining a distance of 1 meter with the customer are among these regulations. We strictly advise these traders to abide by these laws. The curfew passes of traders who fail to comply with the guidelines will be cancelled, while health and other relevant officials will take necessary action against them in the future.
Meanwhile, Dr. Eranga Narangoda of the National Institute of Infectious Diseases says that there is a drop in the number of severe COVID-19 cases in the country. We have observed that there is a drop in the number of affected patients entering the critical stage. The latest finding is that there are people who have been infected with the virus although they do not show any symptoms. This is a dangerous situation as these people are moving among society. We have learned that this virus can remain in the body for several weeks. Generally, a virus leaves a person's body within a week or a week and a half, but also creating antibodies against it. However, this virus has remained for about 43 to 44 days in the body of the infected patients. We are not in a position to determine whether there is a difference between the number of days that the virus can stay in the bodies of those who show symptoms and those who do not do so.
Before we head into more news, the number of coronavirus patients in the country has risen to 323. That is the total number of infections. Moving on in more news, the National Election Commission has scheduled for the parliamentary election to be held on the 20th of June. However, a raging debate has ensued regarding the date stipulated by the NEC. We now direct our attention towards some of the opinions expressed by political parties in this regard.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Party has reiterated that it agrees with the NEC's stance on conducting the general election. Today they expressed their views regarding conducting the election in clusters. This is the opinion of the SLPP. Following the NEC's announcement of the general election being held on the 20th of June, we have observed several factions attempting to sabotage this process. They are using the coronavirus outbreak as a tool to engage in this act of sabotage. They are not bringing this up because of the love they have towards the people. It is not suitable for us to talk about an election amidst this crisis. We agree. But regardless of our opinion, we have to conduct an election. No one would like to conduct an election while the people's lives are at risk. We would, however, like to make the following suggestion. It is difficult to hold the election on one day. They can hold it in clusters. They can have it under 3 phases. The low-risk zones, the high-risk zones and the Western province could be allocated different days to conduct the election. We will only conduct an election when this virus is completely eradicated. However, they are afraid to have the election. Mahinda Rajapaksa or Gotabaya Rajapaksa were never people who postponed elections. They would never shy away from an election. You know very well how Maithripala Sirisena and Ranil Wickremesinghe conducted elections over the past 5 years. Parliament remains dissolved. The NEC holds the power to decide when the election will be held. Our duty is to ensure normalcy is restored in the country. The NEC determined the date of the election after consulting health authorities and other authorities. While the opposition tried to lobby the NEC into postponing the elections, Professor Hool, who is a representative of the opposition, also influenced the NEC to postpone it and create an uncertainty among the people. The NEC that they suspect was the same institution that postponed the election which was originally to be held on the 25th of April after considering the current situation. The president clearly stated that he does not have any intention to influence the decisions of the NEC.
Samagi Jana Balawege said an election should not be held while putting the lives of the people at risk.
What we need is to grant relief to the people and to uplift the economy of the country. We need to provide medicine to the people. More than 80 former parliamentarians of the Samagi Jana Balawege are prepared to support any proposal in parliament to allocate additional funds in order to provide relief for the public. The gazette issued to dissolve parliament is still invalid. That gazette announced that the election will be held on the 25th of April. However, that date has now been rescheduled to the 20th of June. Therefore, it is very evident that the gazette is not valid anymore. What the president can do now is to reconvene parliament. In October 2018, the president at that time dissolved parliament. However, the speaker remained straightforward and did not accept the dissolution. When parliament is reconvened, we hope to fulfill our responsibility as the opposition by voting to pass the funds required to combat the virus.
If an election cannot be held within 3 months, reconvene parliament. The ruling faction does not want to reconvene parliament. When they are asked to reconvene parliament, they act like a dog who is infected with rabies. The government has no right to evade this. It is a responsibility of the president. The constitution should be adhered to. If he does not adhere to this, he is simply violating the constitution. All parties in the opposition are urging the government to reconvene parliament.
United National Party candidate Krishmal Varunasuriya is of the stance that the old parliament can be convened.
The 20th of June date that have been declared by the Commission and the 2nd of June 3-month constitutional limit on which you can, the maximum time that you can run without a parliament has to be harmoniously interpreted, in my opinion. And there is a way out in the constitution itself where when an emergency situation is there, His Excellency the President has enough powers to summon the previous parliament and continue until such time the emergency is over or the next parliament convenes.
Issuing a media release, the General Secretary of the United National Party stated that Parliament needs to be reconvened within 3 months of its dissolution. He pointed out that based on the revised date of the election, the new Parliament cannot be convened on the 2nd of June, which would mark 3 months since the dissolution of Parliament. Karivasam stated that Parliament must be reconvened to pass laws to control the spread of the coronavirus and to also approve the funds required in this regard. The General Secretary, who condemned the politicization of the distribution of the 5,000 rupee allowance, warned that acting outside the framework of democracy for political gains could result in dire consequences to the country.
Meanwhile, the Jathaka Janabalawege questioned as to why the government is afraid to reconvene parliament.
Shouldn't they convene a meeting with all the recognized political parties and discuss a solution to this issue? Now they are saying that they cannot reconvene parliament. Why are they afraid? They should reveal what is preventing them from reconvening parliament. The president has been vested with constitutional powers to reconvene a dissolved parliament to pass decisions and policies concerning financing. The government has received 200 billion in aid. That should be granted to the people and the private sector. The government can inform employers to avoid terminating employment contracts. They can also financially support at least 100,000 people in the tourism sector who have lost their jobs as hotels remain shut. However, it is an issue if they will decide that they will not reconvene parliament, citing that there is a problem with it. Several previous parliaments too had problems in them. However, the entire country is facing a problem and danger. Therefore, parliament should be reconvened to protect the country from this.
The Frontline Socialist Party raised a different opinion.
Initially, the National Elections Commission was of the stance that it will not go against the constitution and will obtain a court's determination to identify what should be done if the general election could not be held in May. But the Election Commission has not completely forgotten about this. So my first question is, why did the Election Commission let go of its stance on the constitution? The National Elections Commission decided to postpone the general elections indefinitely at a point when only 65 COVID cases were reported in Sri Lanka and 1 death was as well. Whenever they were questioned over the date of the election, they said it will all depend on the pandemic and when it will come to an end. However, when the number of COVID-19 cases in the country exceeded 300, the Commission announced that the election will be held on the 20th of June.
Various issues arose in the country while implementing the government's program to distribute a 5,000 rupee allowance among the destitute.
The 5,000 rupee allowance was distributed among beneficiaries among the Nogegoda 519B West Gramaniladara division at the YMBA Hall in Nogegoda. The deputy mayor left the area following stiff opposition expressed by the people. Meanwhile, residents of the Idiwewa Grama division, which comes under the Suriwewa Divisional Secretariat, lined up outside the Grama office with the hope of collecting their allowance.
දරුවෝ 4 දෙනෙක් එක්ක අපි තනි වෙලා ඉන්නේ. අපිට කිසිදු රජයේ කිසිදු සහනාධාරයක් අපිට ලැබුණේ. අද මේ ඉඩමට ගිහිල්ලා මේ දකින්න දේ හෙට උදේ නැති වෙනවා අපිට. ඒ කියන්නේ අලියවිලි විනාශ කර දෙනවා. එහෙම දේ එහෙමත් දුක් විඳින ගමන් තමයි අපි මේ ජීවත් වෙන්නේ. ඒත් එහෙම කියනවා අපිට මේ දේවල් නැති වෙලා තියෙනවා. මගේ මහත්තයා ලෙඩෙක් මට ළමයි 5 දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. අද වෙනකම් මට කිසිම ආධාරයක් දීලා නැහැ.
These residents complained that the allowance had been distributed among several people who are not qualified for the allowance.
ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ අතින් වැරදීමකින් හරි රජයේ නිලධාරී තුන් දෙනෙකුට සල්ලි දීලා 5000 ආයෙත් අද ඊයරෑම ගිහලා ඉල්ලන් ආවද? ඒ දීප මිනිස්සුත් කියන අපෙන් අරන් ගියා කියලා හිතෙන්නේ. එහෙම වෙලා නැද්ද?
More than 400 families in the Kirula division in the Timirigasyaya Divisional Secretariat received their 5,000 rupee allowance in Narahenpita.
Defence Secretary retired Major General Kamal Gunaratne said there was no necessity to seek assistance from other countries to deploy their military to contain the spread of coronavirus in Sri Lanka. The Defence Secretary, issuing a statement, said that the Sri Lankan Tri-Forces and the police had already proved their capabilities in containing the spread of the coronavirus. He said, and I quote, "Our military has already shown their expertise and professionalism in handling the emergency situation created under the coronavirus threat," unquote. The Defence Secretary said Sri Lanka would set an example to other countries which were battling with coronavirus on how a country could use its intelligence agencies with the military and health authorities effectively to control the spread of the highly infectious virus. He said, quote, "Sri Lanka's intelligence agencies have been used to trace people who are closely associated with coronavirus positive patients and also their whereabouts to direct them to the 14 days quarantine process," unquote. The Defence Secretary, referring to the recent news in which said that Indian Army would be deployed in Sri Lanka to support the country's effort to control the spread of the virus, he said there was no such dialogue which had been taken place between the two nations. Meanwhile, the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka refuted reports speculating that a team of healthcare personnel from the Indian Army are to arrive in Sri Lanka to support efforts in combating COVID-19.
At the High Commission told Newsfirst, quote, "There is no medical team or army coming to Sri Lanka," end quote, adding, quote, "This is false," end quote. Indian media citing sources reported moves which are underway to deploy teams to assist SAARC countries. The sources had said that, quote, "Teams for Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Bhutan and Afghanistan are being readied as part of India's policy of extending a helping hand to all friendly countries in the region to fight the pandemic," end quote. According to media reports, India has already dispatched teams to Kuwait and Maldives to assist in fighting the pandemic.
While we appreciate the Defence Secretary's statement in this regard, while as a nation we would be thankful for help from our neighbours and our friends, the dangers of any foreign arrivals in Sri Lanka at this time, in light of the spread of COVID-19, cannot be underestimated. Now, taking a look at the economic side of things, national headline inflation in March stood at 7%, slowing down from 8.1% in February 2020 due to the falling food prices amid the COVID-19 outbreak. According to the National Statistics Department, the decrease was driven by the monthly decline in the prices of food items. Accordingly, food year-on-year inflation declined to 14.1% in March 2020 from 16.3% in February 2020, while year-on-year non-food inflation recorded at 1.8% in March 2020. In more news, Fitch Ratings said Sri Lanka's high debt to GDP levels and lower revenues stemming from slower economic activity could leave little fiscal room for infrastructure development in the country during the next 2 years.
The rating agency Fitch also rated Sri Lankan corporates in their consumer goods retail, construction and hotel among the most affected by the coronavirus pandemic in the country. Fitch said in a statement, quote, "The ultimate impact on rating over the next 1 to 2 years is highly uncertain and will depend on its eventual spread, the knock-on effects of measures introduced to control it, and how long these effects last," end quote. Fitch currently expect a gradual moderation of the corona impact in the third quarter and fourth quarter, provided that the pandemic is brought under control, with a full recovery in operating cash flow at least 12 to 18 months away. Fitch expects both state and private sector construction projects will face delays until economic conditions stabilize. The statement reads, quote, "Hotels will be one of the hardest hit sectors. The tourist arrivals are unlikely to resume to pre-pandemic levels until the COVID-19 spread is contained worldwide," end quote. The rating agency added, companies will limit rating headroom to withstand prolonged distribution, could be subject to negative rating action, and corporates facing liquidity pressure could also see some stress on their ratings.
The air quality index in Colombo has drastically improved due to the curfew imposed in the country. The National Building Research Organization, or the NBRO, told Newsfirst that the air quality has improved due to the reduction in the movement of vehicles as a result of curfew. They recalled that the air pollution levels were much higher prior to the imposition of curfew. Due to this, people were able to spot the Adams Peak this morning in Colombo. What you are seeing right now is the picture that is widely being shared on social media. A presidential task force on economic empowerment and poverty alleviation has been set up under the leadership of former Minister Basil Rajapaksa. The President's media division said that the task force had been set up under Section 33 of the Constitution. Central Bank Deputy Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, the Army Commander, Acting Inspector General of Police, secretaries of several ministries, retired army officers and senior officials from the private sector are among those included in the task force. The Inland Revenue Department has extended the dates of submission for certain tax returns up to May 31st, 2020 due to the prevailing situation in the country.
The department said the e-filing facility is available via the IRD portal e-services for taxpayers who wish to submit the VAT, ESC and pay-as-you-earn returns and withholding schedules. The tax agency said the extension applies to annual declaration of employer pay-as-you-earn tax return for the year of assessment 2019-2020, annual statement of withholding tax for the year of assessment 2019-2020, the economic service charge return for the year of assessment 2019-2020, compounded stamp duty return for the quarter ending March 31st, 2020, value-added tax on financial services interim estimate for last 6 months of the year of assessment 2019-2020, value-added returns for the month of February, March and quarter ending 31st of March 2020, and the transfer pricing disclosure form for the year of assessment 2018-2019.
The General Manager of Railways today informed public and private sector employees engaged in rendering essential services on the health guidelines that should be adhered to when using train services.
We
issued a circular yesterday requesting all organizations engaged in rendering essential services to provide us with a list of names of their employees and their daily commute. If there is an emergency, this list would be given to health authorities or security forces if required. Train services are only available to those engaged in the essential services sector. Security forces have been deployed to every train station. As seats for passengers will be allocated based on a list, we kindly request all passengers to arrive at their respective stations early. The timetables will be announced via the website soon.
කාල පරාසයත් තබාගෙන දුම්රිය ස්ථානයට පැමිණේ කියා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු. ඉදිරියේදී ධාවනය වන දුම්රියවල දුම්රිය කාලසටහන විද්‍යුත් මාධ්‍ය හරහාත් වෙබ් අඩවිය හරහාත් දැනුවත් කිරීමට පියවර ගන්නවා.
Stay tuned to News First.
රජය විසින් නිර්දේශ කර ඇති මූල්‍යමය සහන පිළිබඳ වැඩි විස්තර සඳහා මහජන බැංකුවේ විශේෂිත ඇමතුම් මධ්‍යස්ථානය හා සම්බන්ධ වන්න 0112 481 356 0112 421 501 0112 326 130 0112 392 307 අමතන්න.
Welcome back to the news. Vegetables cultivated by farmers in Kalpitia are going stale as a result of being unable to sell them. The government, in its mechanism to purchase vegetables from farmers, has not drawn its attention towards this particular area.
The soil in Kalpitia is ideal for crops that can be cultivated under both cold and hot conditions. This favorable situation once benefited farmers to a great extent financially. However, the situation is quite the opposite now. The farmers of Kalpitia have been badly affected at present. This is mainly because they have been unable to sell their produce at a good rate. Against this backdrop, farmers are calling on the government to purchase vegetables as they did in other areas. Vegetables such as beetroot, spinach, chili and capsicum have been piled up as farmers have not been able to sell them. We heard the government is purchasing bananas and pumpkin. However, they have not purchased in our areas. Farmers of the Hulannuge area in Ampara are also experiencing a similar plight. These farmers have been unable to sell the harvest that they reaped in for several months by battling a drought. Vegetables such as lady's fingers, cowpea, pumpkin and watermelon are being sold with much difficulty at less than 20 rupees a kilo. We cannot sell our produce at 20 rupees a kilo and pay salaries for those who work under us. We have abandoned our lady's finger cultivation. We do not have a job. We do not have the means to engage in manual labor as well. Due to the coronavirus, we cannot leave our areas as well. How can we sustain ourselves in this manner? How can we find a job? The papaya trees cultivated across hundreds of acres of land in the Mullaitivu district are only enjoyed by birds that flock in the area. These villagers who were once the victims of a war invested in cultivation with great confidence. However, at present, all hopes of these locals have been shattered. We are unable to sell any of our produce. No one is willing to purchase what we cultivate. We urge the authorities to intervene in this matter and give us a solution. Locals in Norotchole, Musalpitia, Alankuda and Navakkadu claim a kilo of papaya cannot be sold even for 10 rupees.
And on that somber note, we move on to news from the political sphere here in Sri Lanka. Various views are being expressed with regard to the date and the holding of the upcoming general election. These were the views expressed by the panelists during yesterday's Satana program aired on our sister channel, Sirasa TV.
When the constitution was being drafted, no one would have expected such a situation to occur. But the question is, what can we do if we cannot conduct the election due to unavoidable circumstances, and if we cannot convene the parliament before 3 months since it was dissolved? Are you trying to imply that this is a constitutional crisis? So isn't there a solution to this problem in the constitution? I don't think so. As far as I know, there is a solution to this. The problem is not with the constitution. We have created a problematic situation. The constitution speaks about consistency. There is no problem here. Doesn't the constitution speak about what should be done if parliament cannot be convened before the 2nd of July? The parliament which was dissolved can be reconvened at any point. If the new parliament is not convened on the 2nd of June, the President's Gazette to dissolve parliament will be null and void. Does it mean that we are going back to a situation that existed before the parliament was dissolved? So that would mean that parliament has not been dissolved. The Gazette will be valid only if the new parliament can be convened within 3 months. If it doesn't happen, then we should go back to the situation that existed earlier. That would mean that the status quo will go back to what it was earlier. What I'm saying is we don't have to wait until the 2nd of June. We have already arrived at the situation because the election has been fixed for the 20th of June. Therefore, we all know that the gazette issued to proclaim the dissolution of Parliament is not in effect. According to my legal viewpoint, Parliament can be convened now. Now, reconvening Parliament is the main issue of some people. That is not the issue with a few. It is there in the Constitution. If this matter is to be taken to the Supreme Court, I wish to say that the solution to this issue is in the Constitution. The President has passed to reconvene Parliament during an emergency under Section 70, subsection 7 of the Constitution. The law states that this power can be exercised until the election is held. The 5-year mandate given to the Parliament is still valid. We reduced that time period during the 19th Amendment. Otherwise, it would have been valid for 6 years. Under the present Constitution, the term of Parliament can be extended until 6 years without a mandate. Section 83, subsection B of the Constitution outlines that the mandate which we have received is for 5 years. The President, using his powers, shortened that period. Under the Constitution, the country cannot be run without a Parliament for 3 months. So far, all steps have been carried out in line with the Constitution. Former President Maithripala Sirisena also issued an order to dissolve Parliament. We then objected the move. This decision was reversed after taking it before the Supreme Court. A determination from the Supreme Court can be obtained in this context as well. No one can act in violation of the Constitution. The President has been granted powers to use them on behalf of the country and not based on what pleases him. The President cannot rule the country without a responsible legislature for more than 3 months. That's what the Constitution says. The financial powers lie with the Parliament. These powers can be held by the President only for 3 months. Funds have been allocated through the Consolidated Fund for government expenses. Therefore, there are certain limits on spending. The government cannot take ad hoc decisions to print money. The government should reveal as to how much was printed during this period. The Parliament must approve this move. The financial aspect is one matter. At the same time, there is also a check and balance system among state bodies. The election cannot be held on the 2nd of June. Therefore, we should decide on this collectively. Let us explain to the President that it would take weeks if we resort to solve this issue through the courts. We can make a promise. We are former parliamentarians of the United National Party. At the same time, there are 80 former parliamentarians in the Samagi Jana Balawegaya. We will give our fullest support towards this.
අපේ සියලු දෙනාටම පූර්ණ සහයෝගය අපි ලබා දෙනවා. 16ම දෙනවා පූර්ණ සහයෝගය. 16ක් එනවා අපි 80ක් දෙනවා.
So we have 16 from one side and 80 from the other. This brings the total to 96. Ranil Wickremesinghe's faction will also definitely join us. And he is in good terms with Mahinda Rajapaksa. The 18 former MPs on his side will also lend their support. Some are speaking of free and fair elections. There were 3 corrupt elements during the 1988 presidential election and the 1989 parliamentary election period. A curfew was imposed at 11 p.m. at that time. That was not because of COVID-19. That was because of the want to come into power. They said they will shoot 5 people and did as they said. That is how some entities acted to remain in power. Some are questioning us now as to why we impose curfews at night. The people who are questioning us are the ones who acted otherwise at that time. A good example for that is the recent incident which took place near the Parliament members' housing complex. We saw how a former parliamentarian conducted himself. I do not wish to mention his name. It is for people like them that the curfew imposed at night is required. Otherwise, we cannot predict what they will do. That incident happened at night. We will control the coronavirus, conduct the election and move forward based on the people's opinion.
Former Governor Asad Saleh expressed these views in Colombo today.
The most important thing for the people of this country is staying alive. There are cases where children do not even have milk. Since day one, we have been telling the government to provide dry rations, but the government did not even take any notice of it. We have received over 700 million rupees in funds to fight COVID-19. With this money, a parcel could have been given to every house. But that money is as it is. The coronavirus only just began, but in the past 3 to 4 months, you have been unable to present a budget. Now they are coming out and lying to the people that they were pulled by the leg, that they were not allowed to hold an election in order to bring forth a budget. This is utter lies. Lying is a feature of Mahinda Rajapaksa.
අපිට ඈවක් ගෙන්නලා අපිට ඡන්ද දෙන්න බෑ කියලා කිව්වයි කියලා මේක පට්ටපල් බොරුවක්. මේක මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මහත්තයාගේ ඇඟේ දුවන දේ තමයි බොරු කියන එක.
An individual who attempted to assault a police officer in Variapala has been arrested and placed in custody until the 29th of April.
The suspect and another individual travelling with him have attempted to assault the officer when he was investigating into an illegal liquor racket. Venerable Vadugedara Sarananda Thero, who intervened, convened a press briefing today. The boy who they say is producing moonshine, his mother works at the home of one of our donors. She told me that her son has not been doing this in more than 3 years. This officer apparently keeps coming and asking for money. He has gone to the police to discuss that. When this boy has gone and spoken to the OIC and the IP over his problem, this boy's brother had come outside and spoken to IP Ratnatilaka. Then this officer Prabhat came on a bike. When the boy's brother asked this officer why he is treating his brother this way, Officer Prabhat had threatened, saying, let's take care of it inside the station. When I went in, they were assaulting him in the OIC's room. Then I told them not to do so, as they have got the wrong person. Officer Prabhat is also a hard-working officer living near our temple. There was no assault on any police officers, that I can assure. If that happened, it would be on that video. According to our correspondent, the police inspector was admitted to the Nikavarathiya Base Hospital for injuries to his head. One person was arrested after a brawl broke out at the Variapala police when an inquiry into the sale of illicit liquor was investigated. A team of police officers have been deployed to arrest the other suspects who were involved in this incident. The police will file legal action irrespective of title and status into all those involved in this incident. The journalist questioned about the status of the individual injured following the brawl. Yes, the injured individual was admitted to hospital and he is not in a critical condition.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1 for tonight. However, we leave you tonight with another rendition of the Gam at the Negatimu Sri Lanka theme song, which was sent to us by our beloved Sri Lankans. Take care, stay safe, and good night.
Negatimu Sri Lanka.